Okay.
Catholic girl who, you know,
Swears like a sailor.
yeah, and we drink.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, why not? That's the best part. We went and had wine.
What the fuck?
When I took the kids to our church at Crossings, they have, and my kids yelled, "This ain't wine, this is like juice."
Hey, what's happening?
How you doing, bud?
All righty. Debbie's here.
Even though I've been there.
Okay, let's see here. View.
You know,
I know what's up with this mouse.
for every state, every city, everything. Every. We know if you got that phone. I will. I just.
What are you talking about the phone?
He needs a phone. He just asked me, they're asking me that I had a old iPhone.
Hey, old phone? Where's
Hi,
my?
Dorothy.
Or you're getting more military thing, but I was a little quick.
Dorothy's connecting to audio. What's up, John?
So what we had about 5 people for last week. He was like, yeah, it's pretty light tonight.
I heard that last week. Oh, pretty good. Be lighter.
Be the 3 of us next week, we the only ones left.
Well, Gary and me will be back next week. Rich is still gone. Cause he's in Honduras and stuff. Thank you for that.
Johnny, how are you?
I'm good, Danny. How you doing?
Good, buddy. Deb. What do we do here, Deb? Speak of you?
What do you, yeah.
I don't know why the,
Did y'all
No.
figure out how to get all those people off the screen like last week?
and now we will pause.
But really? I'm out, you're in, I'm not even going by his house, get that damn. She's nice, you could hang me in here. Something.
How are you, bro? Good to see you.
But that Walmart is, that works for me.
You still working there?
I bumped it into Walmart when I was 5. Or at my house, or.
Hey, guys, guys are mad. You know, when you put that temporary task together, like, yeah.
That I'd be like a place
Hey, Dan,
Yes.
did you get 3 pictures I sent you?
Yeah.
You with the Pope?
Who's talking?
Dan,
Oh, hey, Dan. You got a picture? You got a picture of me and the Pope?
yeah, actually 3 pictures. You were cutting a cake with Dick Cushing and Bill Cowie back in
Oh,
Illinois. probably
in Chicago.
Yeah,
Yeah, and me and the Pope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get them. Where'd you send them to?
I sent them to you. I'll send them again after this is over.
Yeah.
Okay?
I have one at home on my next to my bed in a little frame of me and the Pope.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, is that an old picture of Dick Cushing? Is he still around?
Oh, Dick
He's around.
Cushing
He's
is-
in Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, I know he's in Chicago, but he used to come down here during the winter
Well, he
months.
sold his house. He don't have it no more down there.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cardinal Cushing.
Cardinal
All right.
Cushing is right.
All right, everybody.
Hey, Larry.
let's get started.
How you doing?
All right.
You're gonna have to simmer down.
So we are gonna be either finished tonight or finished next week. For sure. So thanks for hanging in there.
Talk fast, I got plays this week.
All right, the first 11 steps. Any questions? Anybody? Anybody? First 11 steps? No? Well, our book says that if you've done the first 11 steps, then having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So 3 parts to this 12th step, okay? Now, step 11 keys us to the power of God, and step 12 exercises that power where it could be used the best, or to the best of good in service to others, okay? Now, at this point, I'm not sober out of fear anymore. I'm sober out of joy. And that's what the 12th step means, really. All those defects I had when I got here are needed for a spiritual experience. From my weakness through the 12th step, I find spiritual strength. Well, I'm 12 steps away from a drink, 12 steps away from a drug, 12 steps away from a lot of insanity. So now the first part of this 12th step is a promise or a guarantee, if you will. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So it's promising me that if I do these first 11 steps, I should awaken spiritually. Last week, we talked about how most people spend their whole life asleep, right? And that was Anthony DeMilo. And that really makes a lot of sense. So that's what the 12th step is. It's the promise that if these first 11 steps are practiced as written, then you should awaken spiritually. Okay. So the second part of the 12th step is that we carried this message to alcoholics that suffer. So we carry the message. We carry this message. So then the question would be, what is the message? More often than not, people carry the mess and not the message. They carry the mess, not the message. Most people carry the mess.
To other people?
Yeah,
Hopefully.
clarify the mess, he says. Yeah, let's clarify the mess. That's a good question. I would say that anything that isn't the message as written is the mess. Even if it works for you. Because something may work for you and you try it with somebody else because it worked for you and you might kill somebody. You know, we're not talking cured here. So the thing is this though, if I stick with the message, then I'm out of the loop. I'm not responsible for what happens with you. I carry the message. I don't carry out the message. I carry the message. I don't carry the alcoholic. So the question then again is, what is the message? So there's a really short form of what the message is, and that would be, here's a program that works. That's pretty short, sweet, and and quick. Here's a program that works. The first part of this 12-step tells us what the message is, doesn't it? The message is that the first 11 steps will give me a spiritual awakening. And a spiritual awakening means that I'll be able to do, be, and act like I've never been able to do, be, and act before. Doesn't mean that I've gotten better. Of course, I've gotten better, but that in and by itself is not what we're shooting for. We're shooting to awaken spiritually, where I'm able to do, be, and act like I've never been able to do, be, and act before. So what is the message? The message is to help the alcoholic understand what the problem is. Okay, step one. You remember when we first started, I told you that the program and the book is all broken into 3 parts? You remember that?
Yes.
What is the problem? What is the solution? What is the program of action? So now if we're talking about what is the message, the first part of that message is to help the alcoholic understand what the problem is. Not my opinion or as I see what the problem is, but as it's written in the book, in the forwards, the doctor's opinion, and chapters 1 and 2 and 3. It clearly lays out what the problem is. When you get to chapter 4, the first sentence says, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. So all these first 3 chapters and the forwards, the doctor's opinion, lay out what alcoholism is, what my problem is. So carrying the message is to help the alcoholic understand just what that is. And to furtherance the message is to help the alcoholic understand what the solution is. Not my opinion on what the solution might be, but as it's written in the book in chapters 2 and 4. Lays out what the solution is. And then carrying the message further is to help the alcoholic apply the program of action to their life. So it's a message of action that guarantees a spiritual awakening. And again, it's not my opinion on how that happens. The spiritual awakening comes from a result of the steps. So we don't promote the recovery. We don't affect the recovery. We just carry the recovery message and they put it in their life and their life changes. Every time I carry the message, I find something that I need to be reminded of myself, something that I need to know or something that I need to learn. Okay. So the third part of this step is to practice these principles in all our affairs. These principles. So then the question is, what are these principles? And I think we read early on, one of the first few weeks, we read that the principles are the steps. It says in the 12 and 12 in the forward that the steps are a group of principles, spiritual in nature, that practice as a way of life can expel the obsession to drink. And thank you. I just had a mature moment. And enable the sufferer to go. Okay. So that's what the steps are the principles as far as we're concerned. There's lots of principles. You'll learn lots of principles in life as you get sober and grow spiritually. But as far as what we're talking about the steps. Okay. So practicing these principles in all my affairs. So it's learning how to take the 12 steps and apply them to every situation that I have going on in my life. It's a 12-step program. It's not a 1-step program. It's not a 2-step or a 3-step program. It's not, I'll throw this step at this problem and this step at that problem, and I'll borrow from this step to deal with that. And that's not how this program works. It was never meant to work that way. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we pass on what the message is. And the message is that here's steps that are a group of principles that if you practice them as a way of life, your life's going to change beyond your, any imagination that you may have, and your life will get better. And whatever you're practicing the 12 steps on, that situation will get better. You'll overcome that situation. So that's what we want to do, okay? Practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, a lot of this has to do with sponsorship. Okay, so I want to spend time and I'm going to talk about sponsorship. I got a couple of funny things to read for you. Okay, a man is flying in a hot air balloon. I don't know if you ever heard this before, but a man is flying in a hot air balloon and realizes he is lost. He reduces height and spots a man down below. He lowers the balloon further and shouts, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I'd meet him half hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The man below says, "Yes, you're in a hot air balloon hovering approximately 35 feet above this field. You are at latitude 42 degrees north and longitude 80 degrees west." The guy in the air balloon says, "You must be a sponsor." And the guy on the ground says, "I am. How did you know?" And the guy in the balloon says, "Well, everything you have told me is technically correct, but I have no idea what to make of your information. And the fact is, I'm still lost." The man below says, "You must be a sponsee." And the guy in the balloon says, "I am, but how'd you know?" He says, "Well," says the man, "you don't know where you are or where you're going. You have made a promise which you have no idea how to keep, and you expect me to solve your problem. The fact is, you are in the exact same position you were before we met, but now somehow it's my fault." That's a great sponsor story. Then, of course, you've probably seen these before. This is the flyers that they have up. It says, "Are you tired of being told like it is? Still looking for that easier, softer way? Had enough of that same old time-tested direction? Then you are ready for Rent a Sponsor. No reading, no writing, no deadlines, many models to choose from. Standard features include listening to your sniffling without constant reference to the steps, co-signing your excuses and rationalizations, working with only the steps you want in the order you choose. Yes, at Rent a Sponsor, we know how unique you are, and we do understand. Learn the secret of giving it away before you even have it. Why walk the walk when you can just talk the talk? Remember, it's better to look good than to feel good. Why save your ass at the cost of saving your face? Half measures, our specialty. Call 900 pour me one. Call now and receive a free copy of Staying Sober on War Stories Alone. Yeah. All right. So before we talk more about sponsor and sponsorship, is anybody need to talk about, the parts of the 12 step that we went over, the haven't had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, or carrying this message, or practicing these principles in all your affairs? Does anybody need to clarify any of that stuff?
Yes, so if there's a situation and you're trying to look at the 12 steps comprehensive about, okay, I have this situation I'd like to apply. I'm picturing it just kind of going down the line. Okay, first I know I have a problem, so I'm no longer the person you know, taking control of the situation, turn it over to God. I need to, ask God to my shortcomings while I'm working on this situation. I'm thinking, I mean, I know we do every day, but like as it pertains to going to a particular problem, it's
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think you've bypassed the, the initial recipe, for lack of a better word. So like when you stopped drinking, right, you didn't come in here and realize that you got to turn it over to God. Okay, that may be the goal, but that's not what you do initially. You have to work a first step, you know, so you have to, a first step is understanding what the problem is. Okay, so turning it over to God bypasses the first two steps, actually. Okay, and that goes right to step 3. So the same exact process happens for any situation. Whatever you want to work the steps on is the same exact process as for alcohol or drugs. And the only thing that is different is step 1. So we were powerless over alcohol. You remove alcohol and put whatever it is that you want to work the steps on. You're plugging that in step 1 only. So let's say it's just for lack of a better, let's say shopping. You got a problem shopping, right? So, oh, did I hit a chord there?
I'm gonna move.
So we admitted we were powerless over shopping, that our lives have become unmanageable. Okay. And if you remember, the exercise we did in step 1 works for everything. And that's the exercise of writing down, you know, in the pursuit of and under the influence of, what do you do and think that you wouldn't if you were in sound mind? That helps you get to the fact that you fully concede to your innermost self that you're a shopaholic. Okay. So that's the process. Once you've done that, you've done the first step. And the rest of the 11 steps are exactly the same as they were for alcohol. You're not working a 4th step on shopping. You're working a 4th step on resentments and fears and sexual conduct and harms to others. You're not looking at defects as they relate only to shopping. You're looking at your defects that you have. You're not inventorying on shopping. You're inventorying on, you know, the 4 things that we inventory on. So everything is exactly the same except for the first step and that one word that you're going to switch with alcohol. But that's the process. And if you go through that process, it works for everything. For whatever it is, it works for. Yeah, that's a good question. So anybody else? Rich.
On that point, maybe I'm looking for your experience more than, because I think I know what the answer to this program. Working with benzoid people, cocaine people, projects. Have you noticed any, in your experience, any particular emphasis or something that sponsoring folks that helpful? I find it quite different.
Well, it is different. And the process is not different. What you're dealing with is different.
What? That's a good question.
Well, I'll tell you what I see different. I see that people get psychotic. They have significant psychotic problems that develop when use of those drugs.
Yeah.
And men are very different from women. Women are wired so different. I've got several women friends that I don't sponsor, but I talk to. You know, well, it's sort of like you said, men can think about nothing. They get to it. Women can never.
The nothing box.
They're so wired.
Yeah, everything is different. If you're dealing with a barbiturate addict, or you're dealing with a heroin addict, you're dealing with a meth head, you're dealing with a coke addict, you're dealing with an alcoholic. what they've been through and what they've gone through and what they are used to is different than the other ones, okay? But the solution is the same. So if you start to try to tailor the program to somebody or some special needs, that's going to cause problems. And we're going to talk about that actually, because being a sponsor is just learning how to pass this message through. Now they may have some extenuating circumstances that a different type of alcoholic or addict doesn't have, but they're no special or they're not unique. The program of recovery is the same for everybody, because not only is it the same for an alcoholic or a heroin addict or a meth addict or a cocaine addict or a barbiturate addict, or a shopping addict, a gambling addict, a sex addict. It's the same for whatever you come up with. The solution is the same. I think personally, I've never practiced this in my life, but just from looking and talking with people that I know over the years, a couple of years ago, we had 5 or 6 people in here that were overeaters in the class. And that's got to be the hardest thing to work the steps on, because that's something that you can't practice abstinence with.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You have to eat. All the other issues is you have to practice abstinence. But with food, you got to eat. So it's moderation. So try getting an alcoholic to moderate, right? Or a gambler to moderate, or a sex addict to moderate, or you can see the trouble that would be. It won't work. So I would think the most difficult has to be a food addict. Based on the fact that you can't practice abstinence.
Yeah.
Not from any experience I have, but just from okay. So I think about 26 or 27 years ago, maybe more, I was asked to do a workshop on sponsorship. And I had no idea what to do. So I went around and I asked 10 people that had long-term sobriety and that I admired and respected. I asked them all the same question. What is a sponsor? And these are the 10 different answers I got. No particular order. Someone to talk over my screwy thinking with. Someone to share our problems with, an insurance policy when you have an accident. The third one was someone you respect that you can talk to and walks like they talk. Then fourth one said somebody to go to for guidance that is unemotionally involved and can give unbiased advice. I like that one. The fifth person said a sponsor gives time and experience of the program and is living the program the way you want to. The sixth person said a sponsor should be genuinely involved, a genuinely involved participating member of the fellowship that has a working experience of the big book. The seventh person said someone to guide me through the steps that seems to be enjoying sobriety. The eighth person said a sponsor's role is to look and act right. The best way to sponsor someone is to be a role model. The ninth person said someone who is pleasant and happy 98% of the time is either a little slow in the brain or is a good sponsor because he is most likely walking the talk. And the last person said someone who can put up with my shit without putting up with my shit and I keep going back to is a good sponsor. So, and there's sayings through life from different great writers through the years. The way to fully learn something is to teach it, right? And that's sponsorship. Honesty is the foundation of sponsorship, and trust is the vehicle that moves it along. My sponsor taught me I'm not the con, I'm the mark. And then somebody said one time, suppose you were an idiot and suppose you didn't have a sponsor or didn't work the steps. But then I repeat myself, don't I? All right. So the process of recovery is made easier with a sponsor. It's kind of like if you go on if you went on a 3-day fishing trip somewhere, right? And you hired a guide. The guide would take you to the lakes or the streams and where the fish are, and you won't get lost and you'll know when you'll probably catch some fish. Otherwise, you're probably going to spend 3 days in the woods and get poison ivy or something. for me personally, I never, I never could have surrendered to God until I surrendered to my sponsor and listened to what he was telling me. And that's just for me. The question is always this: when can we sponsor people? What do you think with that? What's your opinion on it? When can we start sponsoring people?
You done the 12 steps?
When you've done the 12 steps. Huh?
That's what I'm
When you've done the 12 steps.
I'd say right away.
I'd say right away.
Maybe not right away, but right away. Yeah. Maybe not immediately.
Girls just speak their mind because she.
Well, so here's the thing, right? You can't give away something you haven't got.
Yeah.
But if you look at Bill and Bob, they sponsored hundreds of people in their first 6 months when there was nobody else around, right?
Yeah.
But so the idea is to, if I've done the first step, I can teach the first step. If I've done the second step, I can teach the second step. Right? So pretty much right away, but
But what if
not
they
right
go-
away, but
What if they go past you?
well, that's, you know, the good thing with that is you get somebody, if you're brand new and you get somebody that you're helping, you got to stay ahead of them. So you got to work your ass off, right? You don't want your sponsee to pass you up. When we're that new, we're full of all kinds of, you know, feelings and emotions. And it'd be, you know, I don't know if you can handle the fact that this guy, I'm helping him, he's doing better than me, he's past me.
Well, didn't it doesn't say in the book that we have, being executive or whatever is be of maximum service, right?
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't we be of maximum service if we actually knew and worked 12 steps when we tried to teach them?
Well, yeah, but it also says, with all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Right? So, again, you can't give away something you haven't got.
So that's what I'm saying.
But you're able to, if you're a month sober and you've worked the first step with me, and now you're working the second step, and he comes in and asks you to help him, can you not teach him the first step? You just did it yourself.
I mean, I understand.
So at that point, you can be of maximum service to him.
Hurry up.
Now, the more you grow spiritually, the more you'll be able to help other people and be of more maximum service. But at this point, you're at maximum service, so you can teach what you know, what you got, and if you don't, you can't keep it. All right. So if you wait till you do the 12 steps, you've missed lots of opportunities. So I mean, there's lots of people in AA. And I've run across them my entire sobriety that don't sponsor people. You know, and they'll tell you that they just don't sponsor people. And, you know, and I don't know where they're reading because it's not an option.
I mean, like, you
It's the 12th step.
keep it back.
Yeah, it's right throughout the whole book. You know, it talks about, you know, working with others. There's a whole chapter written about it. So it's not an option. The 12th step is not an option. It's part of our steps. So it's not something that you think might be a good idea and you'll do it. In fact, we don't grow as much spiritually from things that we really, really want to do. We grow more from things that we don't really don't want to do, but we make ourselves do them.
Hate that shit.
Right? Yeah. So you can sponsor somebody as soon as you get going.
Danny,
Yes.
this is Dorothy. I have a question.
Hi, Dorothy.
Which method do you think is best? If having a sponsee come ask you to be a sponsor, or if nobody's asking you, do you go out and find one?
I don't know. Did everybody hear what she said?
Yeah.
You know what? However you get one, get one. You know,
Okay.
if you're going to, it depends. Like certain meetings that you go to, they'll ask people that are able to sponsor people to raise their hand.
Yes.
You know, so that's a good way to do it. Introducing yourself to, you know, one thing that I've been in meetings before where there's a new person and there's been some really sick people with some sobriety in that meeting. And I know that as soon as the meeting's over, they're going to surround this person and give them their number and get their number. And this person's going to be off to the wrong path. But, I am not trying to control the world. It's just, that just rubs me wrong. But introducing yourself to people, carrying the message to hospitals and institutions is another good way to get a sponsee. I personally don't sponsor people that are in treatment, but I tell them where I go to meetings and where they can find me when they get out, because you're not supposed to give your number out in treatment facilities. So if somebody, because people ask you in the treatment facility for your phone number, and I just say, not allowed to give it to you, but if you come out, I'll be at the Western Club on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, and I'd be glad to help you when you come out. So those are good ways to get a sponsee, and then maybe your sponsor is good at getting sponsees, and maybe the next person they ask, they can pass on to you. I've done
Okay.
that. I've done that many times over the years. Somebody asked me to sponsor them, and I say, listen, I got a sponsor that needs to work with somebody, and I say, obviously you must have a little trust in me if you ask me to sponsor. Yeah, okay, here's what I want you to do. Trust me on this. I want you to work with him, and I'll be there with you guys. And I might even sit in when they go over the first step or the second step, or I'll participate, but I let him sponsor him, and it's something that everybody's got to do. I've never had a shortage of sponsees, so I don't mind giving somebody up to somebody else,
Thank you.
Uh-huh. You're welcome. A lot of people want to come to the program, get well, and then work the steps, and it doesn't work that way. You come in here and work the steps to get well. You don't come in here, get well, and work the steps. Come in here, get comfortable, make friends, find out, get feeling better, and then pick a sponsor. My sponsor for 17 years was a guy that, I'm an alcoholic, but cocaine is what brought me to recovery, so I probably could have drank another 10, 15 years, and killed myself a little more before I got here if it wasn't for that cocaine. So, but my sponsor for all those years, if you put a pile of cocaine in front of him, he wouldn't even know what he was looking at. I mean, he'd probably dust it off the table, So it doesn't matter. He doesn't even know what that looks like. He doesn't, and he sponsored me for many, many years. So the steps are not designed to make you stop using. That's the first thing that you got to understand. And not using is only the beginning of recovery. The steps are designed to change you through an awakening spiritually to where you don't want to use, and to where you get to a point where it makes no sense to alter your mind. Why would you want to alter your mind when you're feeling so good, right? Here's the thing. We can't sell recovery. We can't sell the admission of powerlessness. Nor can we sell or give away the desire to stop using or drinking. If you don't like the way you're living inside your stomach, inside your head, and you don't want anybody else to know how you feel inside your stomach and inside your head, but you can't hardly hide it anymore, and you can't continue to live that way, maybe you're ready. Maybe you're ready to say, I need some help. And then if you will do certain things gradually, you will live differently. You will feel differently, and you won't have to drink or use in the process. No magic. The secret is that if you take certain steps that are suggested as a program of recovery, you'll so reorder your perception of life that you'll be able to live in this world as you without having to escape you or the world through alcohol and drugs. Does that make sense? So many people come to recovery, but few of them wind up staying here. Why is that? I was telling somebody before the meeting. So I've done this class. This is 28 years in a row, every week. And without fail, from day one to today, in the last 28 years, always have been people say, oh, God, Danny, thank you so much. I love that class. I get so much out of it. And then after 4 or 5 weeks, you don't see them no more. So kudos to you guys that you're here on week 27, which might be the last week. Uh, so I just don't get it, you know? So people do this all the time. They come to recovery, but they don't stay here. And the necessary ingredient to stay is that they have to hit bottom, and then they have to change. And some people have hit bottom but haven't. You know, it doesn't matter if you hit bottom actually, because if you keep digging, there's always another bottom. There's a bottom under a bottom under a bottom under a bottom. So you have to be desperate and terrified about how you've been living, and you crawl in here and you see. And you hear people talk about things that you do regularly, and they're not doing that no more. Because I don't think anybody that hasn't hit bottom and that isn't desperate and terrified, I don't think they have what it takes to do the work. Well, why would anybody turn their will and their life over to the care of God unless they're desperate and terrified about how they've been living?
Because they see it coming.
They see it coming?
I was
Yeah, it's
either
possible.
really desperate or terrified when I came in here, but I could see it coming.
It's possible. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Nothing's written in stone. But you would be the exception.
The light on the end of the tunnel was not sunshine, it was an oncoming train.
Yeah.
And I could see that.
Yeah.
Now she's leaving.
You weren't. So in other words, you weren't out there waving, you were drowning. I wasn't out there waving, I was drowning. Yeah. Only desperate people though will do, like I said, turn their will and their life over. Only desperate people will sit down and do an inventory of themselves, a moral and fearless inventory. Why would you do that if you weren't desperate and terrified about where you just came from?
I mean, it started out as court ordered for me, but whenever all that court and everything like that, and my federal probation was over with, stuff like that, I still stuck and stayed.
Yeah.
Because I didn't actually know I was desperate and terrified until I got a little bit of sense of it.
Yeah.
You know? So I was that high.
Yeah. Yeah. So you didn't get arrested, you got saved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely God do
Yeah.
for me that I couldn't do for myself.
Think about this. Why would anybody get an alcoholic in here and tell them all about their life, all their dark secrets, unless they were desperate and terrified about where they just came from? It takes that desperation and that terror to get you to do some of these things. So people that are committed to their own recovery at all costs, those are the people that remember the terror and the desperation. And they're the ones that stay. So, one of the things is, some people will tell you men sponsor men and women sponsor women, and that may be better. I don't know if that's better or worse, but I've sponsored many women over the years, many women, and there's nowhere in the book that it differentiates, who you can sponsor. It just talks about an alcoholic. And so that's one of the questions I always get, I sponsor women even today. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things we hear a lot when it comes to sponsors. Fired my sponsor. That's a good one. I like that. Fired my sponsor. What that really means most of the time is that I'm not really ready to completely give myself to this simple program. So I'm going to blame him and get the hell out of here.
I totally get that.
Yeah. First of all, I didn't even know I was hired. I think the only legitimate reason to fire your sponsor is, well, maybe a couple that they went back out. That would be a reason. Or they're not active in recovery. That would be another reason. Besides that, just because you don't like what they told you, that's not a reason.
When you say active in recovery, do you say not active in recovery, like really, like not practicing the principles?
No, active in recovery. They go to meetings, they sponsor people, they work the steps, they have a sponsor.
Yeah.
They're active in recovery.
What if, like, let's say a sponsor's going through some serious issues?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I laughed, but
That's cool.
It's, life is about serious issues, isn't
Well,
it?
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, something that they obviously need to be working on themselves.
Yeah, well, that's something that is, you need to look at, because there's a lot of people in recovery that don't work the steps. And when you get hooked up with somebody that don't really work steps, they're gonna have serious issues with things. And, some things that people have been sober for a long time have never worked through some issues in their life. And
I see it. So if I had a sponsor. And they're-
that doesn't mean they can't help you. And don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Doesn't mean they can't help you, but
Well, would they be really of a sound state of mind to help somebody?
I don't know, man.
It's a different,
I'm just getting old. I'm getting old, and I've been sober a long time, and I just want somebody that's pretty mellow and pretty spiritual and don't have any drama, going on in their life. That's who I want as a sponsor. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I said, like you just said, life happens.
Yeah.
And, so if I had, this is all hypothetical, bro. This ain't actually happening. So I'm just saying, if something comes up in this person's life, right, and I had a sponsor, right, obviously they need to be doing something about it, right? Like working to set themselves or something like that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, look, man, you need to be focusing on yourself right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and get another sponsor. Would that be like firing your sponsor or whatever? Like you're
Well, I don't use that word firing them, but I mean, yeah, if you think you've outgrown your sponsor, maybe you have and maybe you haven't. But if you think you need somebody else to get to another spiritual plateau, then go for it. You're responsible for your own recovery.
Yeah,
Nobody else.
Yeah.
Nobody else is.
What do you think, even as a sponsor, if you're in that certain situation, as a sponsor, I can also back off and say, hey, I'm going through stuff and I need to let you guys go.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair to them if I'm going through something.
Yeah. Years ago, I used to have breakfast once a week with my sponsor, and my sponsor, the guy I told you don't know what cocaine looks like. He's older gentleman. He's not my sponsor anymore because he's really old now. He doesn't get around much anymore. I have a different sponsor now, but he's such a nice guy. Been married like 55 years. That kind of talks nice and soft and low. And so one day we were having breakfast, and I said, I got too many people I'm working with. I'm too busy, and I got to let some of these guys go. I've been trying to pass them off to some of my other sponsees, and I'm just not gonna sponsor anybody now for a while. I was sponsoring guys in 5, 6 different states and a few different countries, and he said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "So you don't want recovery anymore, do you?" And I said, "Well, why do you got to go like that about it?" Of course I want recovery. I just need a break. Oh, you need a break from recovery. I said, "You know what? Let's change the subject. I ain't getting rid of nobody. We'll just keep on keeping on." And I sponsor a guy. I try to keep somebody new in the steps all the time. Because I got guys that I sponsored that got lots of long-time sobriety. I got 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in Europe that I sponsor by Skype every week, and I got guys in lots of different states. But I try to keep somebody new, so I keep going through the steps with them. That's what I like. But anyway, so firing sponsors, and then here's some of the things that sponsors tell us that's again, I don't know if they're bad. I don't want to say they're bad. I don't want to say they're wrong, but I've heard people tell their sponsees, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to hug 5 people a day to come. I want you to hug 5 people a day. I want you to call, X amount of people." They give them crazy assignments, and I don't know that hugging 5 people a day is a bad thing, but where's the steps? Let's do some steps. Let's work steps. That's what our responsibility is, to help them through these steps.
Searching.
Or work the first 3 steps. or burning their fourth step. That's another crazy one. Or trying to control your life. Now, there's a lot of guys in here that I've sponsored, and women in here that I've sponsored, and I have never, ever told anybody what to do. I've told people what's not a good idea to do, and I've told people that experience that what happens when you do stuff like that, but I've never said, don't do this or don't do that. And I say, let me know how that works out for you. You know, you keep getting, what you're getting, you got to stop doing what you're doing. You got to change what you're doing. I'm not here to control your life. That's not my job. So, if you feel the need to do something, if you went through the relationship thing, one of the things I shared with that is I've never, ever shared with anybody to not get in a relationship their first year in recovery. I think that's the worst advice a sponsor could give a sponsor, above and beyond anything, because they're not going to listen. They're not going to listen. I don't care who they are. You tell them don't get in a relationship in the first year, they ain't going to listen to you. Not only are they not going to listen to you, what happens is you've just built a wall between the person you're trying to help. Because now they're going to get in a relationship, but they got to hide it from you. They can't tell you about it. They can't talk to you about it. I had a guy call me, one of my guys in London called me this morning, that he's 7 years sober, and he's probably going to be listening to this tomorrow. And I'm talking about you, I'm talking about. And he called me this morning, and he says, "I got to get honest with you." He says, "He's got an issue with women, and he's married. And about a month ago, he told me he just was way off the beam." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" And he told me everything under the sun except that. That he was screwing around with some lady in the meetings. And this morning, after a month of that shit, and now he's just way down. He just got honest with me this morning. And he just texted me a little while ago that he's feeling much better that he told me about it. I said, I'm glad. I texted him back, "I'm glad you're feeling better. You need to stop that shit." Huh? No. Yeah. Well, if you're telling me that you're feeling terrible in your life, you're just nuts about this thing you're doing, then I tell you to stop doing that. Yeah. I mean, it's that recovery is that easy. That's simple, really. And if you don't like what you're getting, stop doing what you're doing. Yeah. How about that? You don't have to be Einstein for that. So one of the things that happens, some of the stuff that we deal with our sponsees with is like, I think I've shared this before in here. If you're in a meeting and the meeting's just about to start and your sponsee comes in and whispers in here, "I got to talk to you. They got something going on. Can we go outside? Can we go in the kitchen? Or, I got to talk to you." And you get up and go outside with them. That's not a good message that you're teaching. There's etiquette in AA, like anything else in life. And we need to pass on proper etiquette. If I get up and walk out and the meeting's just starting, what I'm telling you is that you're more important than this meeting. So I've had them whisper in my ear many times over the years, "I got to talk to you." Yeah, sit down. Have a seat. When the meeting's over, we'll talk. "But I got to talk to you." No, you got to sit down. Sit down. We'll talk after the meeting. And they sat there the whole meeting. The meeting's over. "What do you want to talk about?" "I forget it now. It's over now." "I'm good. Okay." If I ask you how you're doing and you go, "I'm good," you know what? As far as I'm concerned, you're good. I'm not Sherlock Holmes. I'm not like, "You sure you're good? What do you mean by good? How good are you?" I don't do that. "How you doing?" "Good. Okay. See you." "What's going on?" "Nothing." "All right. Talk to you later." That's what it is. You have to get on. And this guy that I was just talking about, he got honest with me a month ago and he told me he wasn't feeling good. So we spent bullshit time talking about some things he can do and why is he not feeling that way. And I kind of thought there's something he's not telling me. I didn't know what it was. So I asked him even, is there anything you're not telling me? Oh, no. He just called me today. He hasn't, yeah, the last 2 weeks, he hasn't been able to look at himself. Another thing is to give advice on matters we're not qualified. Listen, none of us know everything. But here's the good news. There's somebody in AA that knows. Somebody in AA I can refer you to, that we can call and say, hey, you know what? Doug is going through this. Can you sit down and talk to him? I know you know about this. And they'll always say yes, you know. So my job is to present AA in its most favorable light, being the best example I can of AA. That's my job. The best sponsor you're ever going to have in the world is the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. No matter how great your sponsor is, the Big Book is the best sponsor you'll ever have. The Big Book doesn't wake up in the morning in fear of financial insecurity. The Big Book doesn't wake up in the morning in a bad mood because it didn't get laid last night. The Big Book doesn't wake up in the morning that worried about their job or anything else. The Big Book is here. It's black and white. It's not going to change. It stays the same day after day after day. And all the information you need is in this book. A sponsor is helpful to talk things. We all need somebody to talk to. All of us need somebody to talk to. And here's the most important thing I think I've learned being a sponsor all these years. It is not my job to stop you from experiencing pain. Oof. I'm going to say that again in case you didn't hear it. It is not my job to stop you from experiencing pain. Pain is a good motivator. Pain is a good thing. Pain will get you off your ass and do something. Okay? It's not my job to put a safety net down there and stop you from crashing. I can make suggestions to you. I can tell you what's probably going to happen, but you're going to go ahead and do what you want to do anyway, because that's the kind of people we are. And when you do, you're going to have the consequences of your actions, and it's not my job to stop that. Does that make sense to you? Yes. Very important lesson. And I think in the 12 and 12, it talks about don't try to give motivation to the newcomers about stopping like that. So this is about surrendering, not arguing, right? And not demanding and not requiring. It's about surrendering. We got a few minutes left. I got some stuff I want to go over, so we will finish next week. Okay, next week will be the last week. We'll be done. In January, we're going to start over again, and it'll be the last year live. I know a lot of people are upset over that, but be the last year live. And you guys, kudos again to you for sticking through. Who's got questions? We got a few minutes. Let's do questions.
Danny, this is Tom. I have a question for you.
Hey, Tom.
What do you do? What do you do, or what should we do? I guess when you have someone that asks you to sponsor them, and this is an individual that has some multiple years, you know, whether it's 2 or 22, do you have them go through the steps again from the very beginning, or do you?
Did everybody hear what Tom said? So Tom wants to know what happens when somebody asks you with multiple years of sobriety to sponsor them. Do you take them through the steps from the beginning again? It's a good question, Tom. So I've had guys that I've sponsored over the years that had a lot more sobriety than I had. In fact, I can't even think of his name right now, but you know him down there. He had 45 years sober when I was down there, and he asked me to sponsor him. So anybody that I sponsor, we always start at step 1. Not necessarily like what's his name that had 45 years sober. we didn't start at step one on alcohol because you can't convince me. I don't care who you are and what you say. You can't convince me that he was powerless over alcohol anymore. He's 45 years away from a drink. But, you know, he hasn't had a drink in 45 years. You can't convince me he's powerless over alcohol. But his life was a mess. I asked him, I said, you're sober all these years. Why do you want me to sponsor you? At the time, I had like 25 years, something like that. I had about half the time that he had, actually. And he said, well, I've never really been through the steps, and I got a lot going on in my life, and I'd like to work the steps on that stuff. And I said, sure. And I mean, his wife was leaving him, his business was shot, he was losing his home. His life was a mess. 45 years sober, 45 years of sobriety. Yes, sobriety. Stark raving sober. So, yeah, so we started at step one on an issue. We took one issue. We got through the first two steps and he kind of quit on me. He was cured. Which is okay, you know. But yeah, Tom, I always take somebody on step one because, you know, we have to address what's going on. And, you know, if they didn't need help, they wouldn't be asking me, right? So they would just be wherever they're at, doing whatever they do, and they'd be fine. Obviously, they're not. So we need to start at the first step and find out what the problem is. Does that
Thank you,
make
Danny.
sense? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Who else got a question? Couple minutes left. Any questions? A lot comes up. Yeah.
Just curious, do you meet very many people who have a lot of sobriety that don't have a sponsor, that sort of stop having a sponsor?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not only that, I've met many people that have long-term sobriety that have never worked the steps. Never worked the steps. So, you know, I think one time in here at the beginning of class, I said, you know, the problem is that people that can do that, they're not real alcoholics. You know, so the problem is when a real alcoholic gets sober and they ask one of these people to sponsor them, there's real alcoholics in trouble because my life depends on working the steps and growing spiritually. This person that has long-term sobriety, and I'm not saying they're not sober. They certainly are sober. But if they're sober 30 years and they've never worked the steps, you can't tell me anything. They're not real alcoholic. They're AA members, they're sober. But you can't tell me the real alcoholic, because the real alcoholic is going to need these tools to save their life. And if they've never had these tools, then all they're staying sober on is the fellowship in God, or one or the other, or both of them, you know, and they haven't never changed who they are. And that's what the steps will change who you are. You know, so I'm sober today because the steps have changed who I am. And that's the difference between somebody that's long-term sobriety but never worked the steps. But next week we've got some things. I got a couple of things I'll share with you next week, and then we'll finish up. So thank you guys. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Danny.
Thank you guys. See you guys there.
Have a good
Thank you,
weekend.
Danny.
All right. Take care now.
Okay, good to see you, Danny.
So long, John.